everyone, and welcome back to People Do Want to Know podcast. I alluded to this on our Instagram at People Do Want to Know, but this past week I interviewed an ex-IDF soldier, Chanan Smith. He operates Magen Protection Solutions, which specializes in employee and team development, as well as expert solutions for workplace violence prevention and conflict resolution. I wanted to get this episode out ASAP because it's so important, and I'm so grateful to Chanan for finding the time to do this with me. With that said, trigger warning, this episode talks about violence, self-defense, death, etc. Who is Chanan Smith? Chanan is a former IDF lieutenant who was voted best lieutenant leader among 18 other lieutenants in his division. He has trained and fought with over 200 soldiers under his command and never lost a soldier in combat. He has decades worth of expertise and experience in security, protection, active shooter, and counter-terror operations. He's also part of an elite defense expert consultancy group, which includes former members of the Israeli and U.S. agencies. Chanan has trained everyone, from U.S. Secret Service agents to NFL security to even Hollywood actors. He was even featured in the blockbuster movie Creed II with Sylvester Stallone. I met Chanan in 2022 in Philadelphia when he came to do an all-day active shooter resistance training and self-defense class for the synagogue I worked at, Society Hill. His training completely changed my life. I remember after I got home, I cried about it for 2 days because I was so grateful that I had his training and I felt so empowered. I was like overwhelmed with emotion. So why did his training leave such a lasting impression on me? I'm a Hebrew school teacher and sub, and I have been for many years. I've taken many active shooter resistance trainings, and the classic training teaches you what's called the run, hide, fight model. It's usually like an ex-cop or an ex-FBI agent that comes in and teaches these things. And you don't actually practice any self-defense, and the people I've seen teach these trainings in the past, they kind of do their spiel and say, you will probably end up running or hiding, and that's that. And I remember vividly in one of the trainings, the instructor said, if you leave your kids to save yourself, I can't blame you. And something about that seemed really wrong to me as a teacher. I'm there to protect the students no matter the circumstance. I can't abandon them. It just didn't mesh with my values at all, what these trainings taught. But when I did Hanan's training, everything changed. His whole training was about fighting back, about removing the space between you and the active shooter, not increasing it. And in his training, I practiced even disarming one of his staff with a model gun that weighed like a real gun. And I practiced finding the optimal spot to stand in order to fight an active shooter when they come into the room. I did all those things. And Chanan told us that day that some places considered his training too controversial or too hands-on, but what I took away from it is that it's actually my best chance to get out of the situation unharmed. Being hands-on will be required to survive. And we can look away all day, but it's ultimately a disservice to ourselves above all else. And in light of the antisemitism and violence the Jewish community has felt in the last weeks and months, I knew right away I wanted to share his experience with all of you. So I urgently emailed Chanan and brought him on the podcast. On our episode today, Chanan completely breaks down the psychology of active shooters or people who pose threats and gives practical tips on how to fight back. More importantly, he clearly explains why it's so imperative that we fight back, because in situations with active shooters or violence, fighting back is potentially the only way to minimize casualties. And if we think back to the mass shootings we know where there were few injured or killed, it's those where people fight back. And Chanan explains, it takes just one brave person to step up and the rest to follow. Today's episode is not an easy conversation, but it is incredibly empowering and incredibly important. I don't want to spoil anything for you. I think it's so important that you listen start to finish. So without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Hey, Chanan, it's such a pleasure to have you on the People Do Want to Know podcast. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm excited. I'm great. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be on this podcast, and I'm honored and I'm educated. I want to educate people, about this topic, subjects, and give them as much information as we can.
I am also very excited for you to be here. I have been wanting to do this episode for a while, and I appreciate the opportunity to finally do it together. So my first question for you is, tell us about yourself. What do you do, and how did you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Israel. My family, my last name is Smith, as you can see. My dad was actually born in New York, and he moved to Israel. He actually never came back to the US. So I was born in Israel, so we switched. So I was born in Israel, and actually the first time, and I would say the main event that made me passionate about this is when I was about 8 years old, growing up in Jerusalem. I was on a bus getting back from school. Okay. And like every day kids take the buses, even that age, young. And one of the stops when we were in North Jerusalem, a terrorist came on a bus. Now, at that moment, I did not know that actually it was a terrorist, because what I saw, I was sitting right behind the bus driver. What I saw is the bus driver, who had to be 65, 70, was very old, out of shape. I just saw him quickly exit his seat and just jump on a person, kick him in the chest. I still remember as of it today. And then now I realized that actually there was a terrorist on the bus trying to stab people, and I was sitting right in front. And at that moment, I realized, okay, if he would not have done what he just did, all of us would have been hurt. And also what it showed me is it takes a single person who is unathletic, right, to understand the situation, older compared to what we other people were on the bus. And at that moment, I said, I want to be just like him. And actually, we became very good friends. Every time he did the route to school, I was talking to him, and I was inspired. Years later, I was actually a sharpshooter in the Israeli Defense Forces. And then I promoted and I went to lieutenant school and I became a lieutenant. And I actually commanded over 200 soldiers throughout my service. None of them ever get injured. None of them ever got killed, and everything was successful. And why is because from that young age, I realized how important security and safety is, plus how an ordinary, unique person can do and make a difference. I came to the United States, and actually I was training at the beginning. I was training here agencies and security, as well as some security for the NFL. And after that, my goal and mission, and I'm still doing it, is opening Magen Protection Solutions and empowering companies, organizations, and more importantly, communities. So that's what I do now every day, is I just want to empower communities and educate them about safety.
And how has your experience been running Magen Protection Solutions? I mean, I met you when you did an active shooter resistance training at a synagogue. And I remember vividly, there were probably 15 of us in that training, and half the people, it seemed like they were 70 years old. They were very elderly. And they still were able to participate and learn everything, how to disarm people very easily. We practiced everything, and they felt really empowered. They weren't scared. They didn't seem weak. You look at an elderly person, you think they're going to be weak. What are they going to be able to do? These people were able to do everything and very effectively. So as you reflect now, you've been doing this for quite a few years. What is your experience running these trainings in the US?
I mean, it's been fascinating to see how human beings want to fight. We want to empower ourselves. When we are pushed right against the wall, we want it. It's the only issue is we suppress it and we don't let it out. And a lot of people, they're not teaching that. And I don't blame them, because they've never been in a situation. They don't know what works at the moment. And at the moment, you have to do whatever it takes to get you back home to your family. And it doesn't require a lot. Like I saw in the bus, when I was with the bus driver, you don't need to be athletic. You don't need to be young. You don't have to be the Navy SEAL mentality. You can do it yourself. And yes, we have so many success stories. I just did a training in Philadelphia at a ministry, and there was an 85-year-old woman. And she did a testimonial. I can share the testimonial online. I will be happy. And you can see how a woman like that, 85 years old, said at the first 5 minutes already, she knew what awareness is and what should be doing and what you should be looking. It's all about prevention and then also planning. So yes, that's what gives me the drive. That's what gives me the passion, is how everyday people who are not the Navy SEAL types can do this. Yes, that's what drives me in this. Yes.
From the trainings that you've run, have you ever heard from anyone after the fact on how your training has impacted them? Are there any stories that stand out to you very vividly?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a few that really stand up. I get a lot, but there's a few that really stand up. I would say about 5, 6 years ago, I was training a female in Delaware, and not even for too many times, 2, 3 classes, the dad said to me, listen, I want you to train my 15-year-old daughter. And I said, listen, right now I'm in between trainings of big stuff. He says, no, I insist, 2, 3 trainings. She really wasn't into the trainings. That's why we kept it to 2, 3. She had no interest in the trainings, but she said, I'm here. I'm going to do 100% of what you're asking and demanding from me. And I said, okay, that's what I want. I had to go to Israel for something during that time. So I flew to Israel. We only trained about 2, 3 times. I went to Israel. And then I got a phone call at night. Now we have the time difference. So I was debating to answer the phone, not to answer the phone. I answered the phone. And it was her dad crying on the phone, tears, crying on the phone, saying to me, I want to really thank you. And the reason is because 4 girls jumped her in the women's room of the high school, beat her. And a few weeks before, there was a female who really got beaten badly. That's why she came to me. And she was able to protect herself and not end up in the emergency room just from 2, 3 classes of learning what to do in an event. And there was multiple of them. And that was one story. Another powerful story I have is there was a serial rapist outside of Philadelphia. And the NBC News came to me and said, listen, we want to do a news story and we want to give you like an 8 o'clock time slot. And we're going to give you like 4 minutes, which is like prime time news. So they said, do you have anybody with you who can demonstrate, who can pretend to be that? I said, sure, my wife, we can do it together. So they came all day, we filmed, and for a very, very long time, we filmed because they were trying to pick the best footage. And I tried to just educate what to do when somebody comes up to you and puts a gun to your face and kidnaps you in the car, because the rapist did every single thing the same way. So that's how we knew it was the same act. It aired that night. It aired the next night. I was teaching a class. And at the middle of the class, now you can go everywhere and type in this NBC and you can watch what we did then with the wife. I was teaching a class and I can see outside. So there's storefront windows so we can see outside. And I see a car pull up and a woman is helping another woman getting out from the passenger side. So the driver gets out and then opens the door for the passenger. And I see a person comes towards me. So the students, the clients can't see. I'm looking out from inside out. And there's a cast from the shoulder on one side to leg. Almost the whole body is casted. And the friend is helping her to come in. So I give them chairs. Matter of fact, one of the chairs that I'm sitting right now is the same from that place. And they were sitting in a chair. And I realized that something is off. They had very emotions. I told all the students and the clients at the moment of the room, leave. We're going to make up this 10 minutes or 15 minutes that's left. Everybody understood and everybody left. Amazing clients. And then I looked into the female and she said to me, do you know who I am? And I said, I don't know you personally, but yes, I know who you are. She said, who I am? I said, you are one of those females who got attacked by the serial rapist. And she said, yes. And she shared, as soon as she said yes, she started crying. She shared the story of what happened to her and how I impact just the 3 minutes that the news did, right? Just that small. She said, I wish I knew what you said in that episode of the news. I want you to heal me. I want you to educate me. I want you to help me. So these are the stuff. I have many, many, many more, right? Because you empower hundreds of people. But these are like the top ones that come to my head quickly and say, and we have plenty more situations where people use it on a daily basis to help them prevent or, God forbid, cope and know how to mitigate and de-escalate and get out of the confrontation immediately. I always say 4 seconds. This is it. This is what I give you. As soon as the conflict began, you have 4 seconds from start to finish to get out of there. And that's what a lot of people remember, yes.
Wow. I mean, yeah, even when I think about the training that you did for where I worked, I'm always brought to tears thinking about it because it's so emotional. And you talk at length about this ultimately comes down to how much you want to survive, right? How much you're willing to fight your own fear in order to get out of there alive. So on that note, I want to ask you to talk about the psychology of some of these environments and why fighting back is so effective at preventing mass casualties in the example of active shooters or just other threats?
Sure. So if let's start with the active shooter, because that's the toughest position to be in, right? If we think of conflict, you think of active shooter as the toughest to be in because the whole objective is to mass harm people badly. And we're going to use the word mass. It's not like a typical crime where maybe an individual wants to be robbed, meaning they're going to rob the individual or carjack, or they want property, or they want money for drugs. No, when we're talking about a mass shooting, it means that the objective is to get as many people as they can. Here's the thing that most people do not realize and understand. The weakness of the shooter is never talked about, meaning whoever commits this type of acts, they're weak. We're giving them way too much credit. Too much credit. Too much. Remember, here's a few things. Number one, they never done it before. Ever. An active shooter never ever done it in the past and never will do it in the future. Either they get killed or they kill themselves, which again shows us how weak they are. Upon resistance, they turn the pistol or the rifle against them. This shows me these are not real criminals. These are not strong individuals. They already commit the act from a weak perspective, which means if we address the subject and start the sentence by, yes, it's the toughest position to be in. However, these are weak individuals. We have the numbers. The whole point of a mass shooting is to come into environments that have mass people. But here is the problem. When you teach a person to run and to hide, here's the equation you're giving them. A person is 5 feet from you, assuming, right? 5, 10 feet. Here's the equation. When you try to run to the door, right? What are you doing? A few things. Number one, you're creating distance technically from the shooter. By doing this, you're giving the shooter more time. When you give them more time, you're giving them more composure. You give them more accuracy. Their heart rate goes down. You're giving them to give more accurate, which means if they have more time to operate, you're going to have high casualties. Plus, everybody's trying to run to the same exit. How many people can fit through a 3-4 foot door? Not many. So if you have 50 people inside a synagogue, a church, a conference, a HR convention, or anything, and you're trying to exit the door all at the same time, you're creating a bottleneck, which means the shooter needs to aim the firearm at one direction. You're making it so easy. Now let's flip it. You are 5 feet away, but now you're closing it to 3 feet, to 2 feet. What are you doing? You are creating distance less, which means you're minimizing time. You're minimizing time. You're increasing their pressure. You're increasing their pressure, their heart rate, the accuracy goes time, the window of operation, everything becomes minimized, which means your casualties go down. Go down. Same with hiding. Who is easier to attack? A person running, a person hiding, or a person fighting? It's easy. The person running away from you, all day long you have time to operate on them. Same thing, the person hiding. However, a person fighting you back. Imagine 2-3 people. It doesn't take much. In Southern California, there was a restaurant, a ballroom. We have same shooter, same element, same tool, same setting, which means in statistics, this is the highest way to measure statistics. The attacker goes into one room, injures and kills multiple people. The same attacker with the same mean, the same tool goes into another room and gets 0 people. 0. Why? Because there's a single person that later on was on the news, said he never touched a firearm in his life. And he was able to take the firearm away. Yes, he got scratched in the face and his eyeglasses fell down, but he walked back to his family. And guess what? When you watch that film from Southern California, you see that the attacker just walks away. He walks away. Once the firearm is pulled away from him, he walks away. So the key things to remember for mass shootings and any mass attack, these are weak individuals. You got to fight. You got to work together as a team. You go after the shooter's weakness. They never done it before. You have the numbers. And most importantly, and I call it the Israeli and the Jewish fighting spirit, never give up. Never give up, and you're going to be fine.
That's amazing. And that's something that I think about very often. You know, we're in 2024. I couldn't imagine that Jewish people would be discriminated against just like they were in the beginning of the Holocaust. What we're seeing on college campuses and just in public areas in New York, it's out of control. What do you wish to tell Jewish people about why it is so important to fight back? And are there any pieces of advice that you'd want to leave them with?
Yeah. So first of all, anti-Semitism was always there. It wasn't, and we'll talk about how it now comes out, but it was always there. We had the shooting in Pittsburgh synagogue. We had incidents to show. Now, here's another thing. When we looked at after the Holocaust, when our grandparents and even our parents told us there is anti-Semitism, and we, when I say we, is like the younger generation that came up, we said, no, we're living in a perfect world. And we started to basically, in Hebrew, we say ashlaya metuka, which means we have some kind of like euphoria in our heads, and we prefer to live in that bubble and that no, everything is nice, rather than metziut amitit, as means a reality. We got to live in what it is reality. So what's happening now on college campuses, now here's the main thing. This is almost like bullying. When you have a bully, you need to have three elements there. Number one, you need to have the person who's doing the bullying. And number two, you need to have the person that gets bullied. But nobody talks about the third element, which I always talk and not many people do. But that is the most important, more than the person who's bullying. There has to be the setting that allows it. The whole point of bullying is you can't just go everywhere and do it. You have to be in an environment that allows it, right? And in college campuses, there is a fact that some college campuses just allow it to occur and some don't. So what we need to do is we need to understand, okay, currently we live in times that anti-Semitism is coming all over, and we are now being the ones that it's all targeted towards. But we need to understand that it's always been here. But what we can do is not to live in fear, okay, but to live in empowerment. And I'm going to give a few things of what we can do. First of all, to help you understand the times we live in, we just had Passover. And the two most important lessons that I love, Passover is my favorite holiday. And I'll tell you why. There are two most important lessons that I teach my family. Number one, Bechol dor vador omdim lechalotenu, which means every single generation, somebody is out there for us. And that's never going to stop, ever. Okay? But the second lesson is getting out of Egypt. Now, here's the thing. When we got out of Egypt, it was 40 years before we went to Israel. Do you know why it was 40 years? Here it is. When we got out of Israel, we were slaves. We were weak. We barely had food. People were in the mindset were still slaves, aching the pain. Now, Israel at that time were powerful kingdoms. There were rulers there, different, and then smaller tribes, bigger tribes. Moses knew that with the type of mindset and mind and body, we can never go defeat them. So what happened in those 40 years? We say in Hebrew lechashel, which means to be resilient. It took us 40 years to unite, to gather ourselves, to get and build another generation, a generation of fighters. They switched the mindset from a victim mindset into a warrior mindset. And after 40 years, we were resilient. We were united. We were strong. We had a new, whole, empowered generation. Now you're able to go into Israel with not a slave mindset, but a warrior mindset, and go and get what is yours. And that's how it was. And we live in generations like this where we need to remember that in every generation there's going to be this, and it's sadly to say my kids are going to go through this. And the next generation is going to go through this. But we do not live in fear. We live in caution. We have to be prepared. Now, what are the things that you can do to be prepared? Number one, you need to be more aware of your surroundings now, which means if you choose to wear a Jewish identity, you don't need to be afraid, but you need to be more aware. And I suggest that you already in your head have, if somebody says something to you, I have people come up and say something to me, okay, you need to already have that in your mind to say, okay, how do I respond and how I do act when this happens to me? When it's a verbal thing, you should be acting in one way. When it's a physical thing, You need to do another thing. Get a self-defense class. Go learn about de-escalation. Take an empowerment class. Learn about the confidence that you can do. People choose to harm those, I won't say who accept it, but those who won't fight back. People don't go after who fight back, who's strong. Go out there, educate yourself, take your family 2 hours, get yourself into a self-defense course, know more about situational awareness. When you choose to conceal it, okay, it's your choice. And then to open it in public during these times, this okay too to do. So if you say, okay, these days are a little bit more heated than other times, and if I have a yarmulke or I have a Star of David and I choose right now to conceal it while I'm in the subway or on transit to the synagogue, it's okay to do. But the main thing is to not live in fear. Never. Live with caution. Navigate life with confidence, empowerment. If you know how to protect yourself, if you take a self-defense class, but take it from someone who believes in the offensive mindset, not a defensive perspective. You always want to make sure that you present confidence, you present resilience, you present that. That's how you empower yourself, and do it as a community. If you can get a synagogue to do something like that, if you can get like a community to do that, you're going to be a lot more than that. Yeah.
I agree with every single word that you're saying, and I think it's more important than ever. And there is a huge fear among Jews in New York City right now. I'll speak about my experience, but
Sure.
it's a shame because it really only takes one person to set the precedent that they're not going to put up with violence and aggression, and then all the pro-Palestinian protesters, those liberal students that are on campus that are young, some of them are teenagers still, they back down because they're not prepared for any resistance at all. They're not prepared for confident Jews. I was at a rally a couple of weeks ago, and as soon as I got there, I noticed that there was a big crowd around these people. So a couple of young girls brought in banners that were bright red that said something about like genocide and the classic. They came into a crowd of hundreds of people with Israeli flags, hundreds of probably Jews. I'm sure there are non-Jews there, but I'm assuming it's mostly Jews. And the three of them walked in with their big banners. They were not scared of the crowd at all. And so all the Jewish people who are there to support Israel get so scared. They're like, what do we do with them? What do we do with them? So I came up to them and I shoved them as hard as I could. And as soon as the other people around me saw that I shoved them, they formed a human chain and started pushing the girls out of the protest slowly. A mass line formed. And then the cops came and the cops took them out. And there was no violence. But those girls did not expect any resistance whatsoever. And for the first, 15, 20 seconds, there was no resistance. And all the people were like, what do we do with them? What do we do with them? Because they're so scared that they're going to end up on the wrong side of the story, that they, were the first to attack, or, they were violent, that it's a felony, whatever. They're scared for the consequences. But as soon as I shoved one of them, everybody ganged up on them and we took them out very quickly. And I just want people to think about the importance of agency. Like, you are a free person. You can take control of the situation. You can step up and you can fight back. You don't have to accept that these three girls walked into a crowd of 400 people. You can take them out, and you should.
Yeah, so we have to see, like, you have to, when we talk about fighting, you have to know in the situation, is it an instigation, or is it really where my life is at risk, or my thing is at risk? And that's a very thin line. So that's why you need to know where you walk away, and that's what they're looking for, right? They want the instigation, they get the cameras out, and they get something to say, but they will dare not to touch you, okay? They will dare not to touch you, right? Whereas if we play their game, you have to make sure to see that you don't want that constant back and forth. I want to make sure that they understand that it's not, that we're not here to play the game with them. and they're going to try and push your buttons. And that's why I say you need to know what situations I am going to address, what situations I will not go to address. I think more and more Jews right now should go and get educated on how to protect themselves. And remember, and that's the thing that I don't see a lot, is we have the older generation that warned us and told us that these are the things that happened to them. And they took the protection, and they always educate us. Now it's time for us to go out there and at least get educated of what do you do when you are in a synagogue, or you go to Subway, or you're on college campus, you walk into your car and suddenly somebody comes from behind and slams you against the car of the windshield, or tries to take your kid away from you. God forbid, worse, what they did on October 7th, right? So more and more things like that. And the only way you walk with empowerment is when you show that you have the ability. I always tell my students, it's like a rattlesnake, right? If you have a rattlesnake just sitting there under a bush, nobody's actually going to go pick at it, right? The rattlesnake doesn't need to yell, I'm a rattlesnake. We all know it's a rattlesnake. And that's the same thing I tell the students is we don't need to go and shout, we are rattlesnakes. Just sit there under a bush, do your own business. You want to nap, you want to walk, you want to be with the Yamakayes. But when somebody wants to harm you, you do what the rattlesnake does. And that's the same thing. Is I want people to get educated out there, what the scenarios, how to respond to them, what are the weaknesses in the human body, what is the psychology behind it. Same the thing we talked about active shooters. Attacker is still an attacker, right? They want to go after the people who are weaker, people who will accept it. More importantly, settings that will allow it. Like you said, once the police showed up, suddenly the setting was going away. So the more we promote empowerment, the more you have stronger communities, the more people realize it, the less it will happen, because then they'll have nowhere to go, right? If every place they go, they get defeated, right? Or they get shut down, why would they go outside from the door? So you need to go, get yourself educated, and do it as a part of a community.
I completely agree. And I'm worried about the normalization of like open aggression against Jewish people on the street. I hope we can set a precedent that we're just not going to accept that. We're going to need a lot of non-Jewish people to back us on that. But right now, these last few weeks, I think in some sense, Jews like normalize that we're just going to have these people yell at us out of their tents and sit there all day, and that's how it's going to go. We need to see lawsuits. We need to see action against this behavior. We need to set the right precedent around what just happened to young Jewish students on campus where they pay a lot of tuition. And in addition to that, I want to ask you, in large urban cities like New York and LA, is there anything Jews can do to protect themselves right off the bat before they've taken a self-defense class? Are there any tips or tricks that you recommend?
Well, so even before taking a self-defense class, you need to see what your laws are like in each state. But if you want to have your car keys in your hand, to be more confident and to strike with it when somebody wants to harm you, you can do that. And like I said, immediately to take a self-defense class, to be more aware. So when I say more aware, so here's the deal, right? Every single attack happens in three ways, okay? This is important. It doesn't matter what type of attack it is. All of the attacks occur this way, all of them, okay? It can be as big as whatever incident you want, and as one person attack. So the first thing is what we call target selection, which means the attacker or attackers choose a person or a location. So what does that mean? First, I pick target selection. Next is what we call a test. They have to make sure that the person they picked is not a Wonder Woman, no, not a Navy SEAL, no Bruce Lee, right? They want to make sure that the person they picked, because here's the reason. They never look to lose. They don't want to lose. They want to make sure they have 100% success. So first we have target selection, then we have test, which I'll explain what is it. And then we have the third one is the attack. So let's go back to the target selection. It can be something as months, like if you're a college student, somebody can watch you for a month and you don't even know it because they know your class schedule. They may be in the next room where you sleep, right? So sometimes target selection can be something that's over weeks or even months. Or it can be as quick as just seeing a yarmulke, or seeing a Star of David, or seeing a female that's vulnerable. She is maybe on a phone, not paying attention, anything like that. Once they pick that target, whatever reason it is that made them chose you, the next step is to validate that, to make sure that they picked right. So what are they going to do? They're going to test you. And there's two ways they're going to test you. One is an emotional test, and the other one is a more aggressive test. So what's an emotional test? An emotional test, hey, excuse me, I need $5. I lost my son. Can you please call police for me? What time is it? They're playing towards your emotion of your heart to lower your guard, okay? A physical, more aggressive is something like, I hate how you look, or what's that Star of David, or hide it, right? But they are still at the test phase. It doesn't mean. Now, this is crucial because at this moment, it's make or break. So when you are at the test phase, here's what I suggest people to do. You become stern and hard as a rock, and you look him in the eyes and you say, can I help you? You show confidence. What is it you want? Yes or no? And you make sure that you get out of that situation and you show them that there is going to be a fight if they choose. Because remember, they don't want to fight. They want to win. They're not looking. Nobody is looking to break a nose or break a finger or go to prison over you. They want it to be flesh, meaning easy for them. They want to be successful. So then the third phase. So if you failed your test and you passed theirs, then we move on to the third part, which is, yes, then you get into the physical assault. So what I'm trying to educate people is, at the part of the test, and the easiest thing to do, because I have students and clients who tell me, hey, we were in a parking lot of a grocery store and we just pretended like we know judo. And we just said to the guy, get away, we judo. And the person ran away. And then they came to me and they said, we have no clue of what to do, right? But what got them out of the situation was confidence. This is what I used to tell my soldiers and the agents. Life is like a piece of paper, okay? So at the bottom is always, it's what we call edge. You tear it, there's going to be another edge, right? So I used to train in different ways. I used to tell them, if you think of a problem, if you think if only one problem, you get rid of it. No, there's going to be another problem. And I used to teach them also about soldiers. If you think you're going to get rid of this soldier and you go, the whole team will be fine. No, there's always going to be a problem. Same with fights. You're always going to have the bottom represents of the paper, the victims. You're always going to have people who are going to get hurt. The top represents the criminals. And what I say is, you just make sure it's not you, a family member, a loved one in the community. And the way you make sure of it is you show the attacker that there's going to be a fight. And they'll never want to fight. They're going to go pick somebody on that bottom edge of the paper, and they're going to try and do something that's easier to them. So the fastest way to get out of a conflict is to make sure that when somebody is at the test phase, to make them know at the moment that this is not playtime. We're here to protect ourselves, and if we need to get physical and necessary, we are not stepping down from it. And that's how you avoid it. That's how you do not even get into a physical altercation, by showing them that we are not afraid to get into one. That's how you get away from one.
Mic drop, Hanan. I learned so much from you today. This is amazing. And this is funny. So, when you talk about they're trying to figure out who their target's going to be, and you essentially need to prove to them it's not going to be you, right? Mm-hmm. They might move on to the next person, or they might stop altogether, but you just need to demonstrate to them that you're not the target for them today. So I have a little brother, and he's much nicer and kinder than I am. Like, I was always growing up the kid that, was always fighting back and being sassy and whatever. And he's much younger than me. So growing up in school, whenever the boys would, be mean to him or whatever, he was always scared to fight back, because he's like, well, I'm going to get in trouble if I fight back. And my dad would always tell him, okay, so you'll get in trouble. I'll pick you up from school. Who cares? And so as he got older, you're not going to fight at school, right? So he'd be like, what do I say to them? What do I say to them? And I would tell him, you just look them dead in the eyes and say, do we have a fucking problem? That's all. because they're not prepared for you to ask, right? So that's my approach to anything. Anytime you get, even like at work, the colleagues that are always trying to start shit with you, whatever, simple question. Do we have a fucking problem? That's all. It works every time. Yours is just a more advanced and more serious.
Mine is more, yeah, but same thing. Can I help you? Right? It's the same. Now I'll tell you what. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
Different execution, same method. So it just kind of made me chuckle because I was like, I use that sometimes in different contexts. Okay. So on that note, I want to ask you, is there anything you want to share with our audience today that you think is important to hear for Jewish people?
Yes, that I want to, at the end of the day, when I see a person who got hurt, I'm looking at four main reasons why it happened. Okay. And I would hate for anybody to get hurt. So I want to educate them about the four reasons. We talked about the 3 steps of attack. And now I want to talk about, just about the 4 reasons. Number 1 is lack of awareness. Now we are in a stage of time that you cannot always be aware. And I accept that. And you cannot. Nobody can tell me I can always be aware. We're in digital age. We're on the phones and all that. But what about awareness is, we have what we call moment of commitment and moment of recognition. It means moment of commitment means when the person is about to attack you, before they attack, they will make a sign of it. Everybody does. It's very hard. Even a trained agent who is about to operate will show a sign. So the typical person off the street will definitely have a sign. So the first thing is what we call moment of commitment is when they are about to commit to attack you. Moment of recognition is how soon it takes you time to recognize that commitment, not to wait for the punch to hit you. And the sooner you recognize that, you're going to avoid the fight. So mistake number 1 I see at people is they're not aware of that commitment. Reason number 2 is not having a plan. Okay, what does that mean, not having a plan? Is seeing the problem and not you say to me, I don't know what to do. And I'm going to give you the best advice now of what's the plan. And I have an abbreviation for it. It's called IDF. IDF. Identify, de-escalate, fight. It's mine. Identify, de-escalate, fight. Identify means identify the problem. De-escalate, we just said. De-escalate means look in their face. Say, can I help you? What's going on? Can I help you? And I love it because can I help you means I see you. I'm not scared of you. I am offering help to you. Imagine what goes into their head. How confident are you to offer help to a guy or a girl who's about to attack you? And then the F stands for fight, meaning the plan is simple. We de-escalate, we mitigate, and then when you need to, you fight hard. And then, so that's the response that I want you to have. And the third reason for it is, yes, that people get hurt is having a bad response. Choosing, like we said about the active shooter, choosing to run and turn a back when you cannot. Choosing not to fight, quitting. The fourth reason is quitting, freezing. You can't. That's what they want. They want you to freeze. They want you to quit. So to summarize this, I want you to be confident. I want you to have a plan. Identify, IDF, identify, de-escalate, fight. We don't preach for violence. We want to mitigate it. But when you are attacked, you must fight and get out of the situation. And I'm giving you less than 4 seconds to do it. Okay?
That is amazing. Thank you for everything you shared with us today. Absolutely incredible. And exactly what I was hoping to convey to everyone listening. So this is a real privilege. How can people connect with you and follow more about your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the easiest way, because right now I'm looking to educate more people, especially and more on the protection. So I am going to do some kind of podcasts and YouTube videos, but the fastest way to stay in touch is if you have a LinkedIn, you can stay Chanan Smith on the LinkedIn. I just started an Instagram page, Chanan Smith, so I will upload videos and content like that. So those are probably the 2 fastest ways to reach. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. If anybody has a question, a situation, a scenario, a story, anything on LinkedIn, and on social media, just type my name and on Instagram and on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to help you with any questions that you may have. Yeah.
Hanan, be careful. You might become an influencer. And the school that you have out in Florida, Does it
Yes.
still teach self-defense classes? Can people who are listening from Florida sign up, or how does that work now?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually two things. Number one is I did during COVID a few years ago, but it's still a great self-defense seminar or course, very easy with my wife. It's very, very inexpensive. So if you want to learn tips and you can't come in person with me, I have a great training programs that you can train with a friend, your couple, or anything like that. I did with my wife, so it's very, very educational. At the same time, you will see a 5'1" female destroying me there. So that's one way. The second way is yes, if you are in Florida or able to come to South Florida, I'll be happy to host you. I have a place in Boca Raton, and I'll be happy to host you in my facility here. Yeah.
You know, this is a random question, but I was always wondering because when you came to Philadelphia, you brought someone from your team with you to help you
Mm-hmm.
assist in the training. How do you hire the guys that work at the school and help you do the training? How do you find them?
So I like to hire people who are military people who understand the offense, and that's one of the reasons I was a sharpshooter myself, right? So I understand what's the mindset from here. So in order to help you, I need somebody who lived it from both sides. And I love when I get the military people because they have been in situations. So when I educate, and they love to see the empowerment because they believe in this mission. If you take a person who's never been in combat and you ask him, hey, can a female who's 5'1" fight a guy who's 250 pounds? The answer will be no. But if you ask a soldier, can a 5'1" female fight that guy? And the answer will be is yes.
And do you think there's a difference in how the US military people are from Israeli or no?
I think, well, we're similar, but we're different in a way that we serve, everybody has to serve. So the mindset is different, but we see a lot of similarities. And at the end of the day, we do see them as a very strong community. The US military, they train with us. I mean, we love them, and vice versa. It's very easy for me when I come and work with them. So a lot of people behind closed, there's a lot. They come to Israel. We do a lot of work together. Same thing here. So we have a lot, and that's who I hire. I love most of my people I work with are American soldiers. Yes, we do have Israeli, but here in the States, the American. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks for humoring my tangent here. And my last question for you, it's one that I ask every single guest of the
Sure.
podcast is, who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know?
I have a special one for you, and it's not really to nominate, is one of the things, and it's giving me chills to even talk about it. If you can get somebody from the Nova Party, and here's why, from their party from here. When we talked about active shooters, one of the things I do when I do my trainings is I dedicate it to a soldier who was actually at the party, and he wasn't at that, he was a soldier at the party, but he wasn't really a soldier at that time, right? He came to celebrate at the party. So no rifle, nothing like that, plain clothes, right? And when the shooting started, when everything started at the Nova, he gathered a few people and he put him inside an area. And he found another soldier and he said to the other soldier, listen, here's the deal. I have no firearm. You have a firearm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand in the strategic location. And he physically locked everybody else in that room. He could have hid in that room, right? But he locked himself outside of the room to make sure he is that security person and he has no firearm. And he said to the soldier, listen, they're going to come very fast in, multiple people. Whoever you can get, you get, but I'm going to stand next to you. And what he did is he grabbed with his bare hands, just boom, one after another. I mean, they are saving everybody's life, right? And at the end, the enemies, after a while, they realized what's going on. So they shot RPGs and grenades. So they didn't even walk in. They just came from the outside. And that's one of the things that I want to convey to people is there is a fighting spirit in you. And if you have it in you, nobody can shut it. And that's one of the things that they did not expect in October 7th. They did what they did horrifically in Kfar Aza, in Be'eri, and the Nova. But what stopped them wasn't the soldiers, right? What stopped them was a strong communities. It was 5 people here, 5 people here, 3 people here. There was a rabbi in Netivot, that he ran to Sderot and he saved so many people from his community. It took, and that's what I want to show people, that it doesn't take, you don't need this monster operation. You need people around you. So to help you say that story, what I recommend is to get somebody from that Nova Party or somebody from there to tell their story. Because I'm sitting here And people say, well, he's a lieutenant in the forces, or he's this. But when you bring a story of a person who's been there on October 7th, and they can say their story, I think that's very powerful. So if you can link with that, that's my suggestion is there's no more, and there's many people who would love to do this. Yeah.
I think that's an amazing nomination. Thank you so much. And if there's anyone listening to this who has connections to a survivor or someone who'd be willing to speak, please reach out on Instagram at People Do Want to Know. I will bring them on first thing. I think it's very important. And the heroism of the people who just, activated in that moment, they didn't fall apart. They gathered their thoughts and made a plan. It's just incredible. We have a lot to learn from Israeli society on what you call the fighting spirit.
That's right. That's what I always call the fighting spirit. We have to. Our fighting spirit, yes.
Thank you so much, Chanan, for coming on today and for bestowing your wisdom on all of us. And I'm going to have to take some time to think about everything you said. Every time I hear you speak, I'm, very touched. I'm brought to tears multiple times hearing you speak. And it's just the greatest privilege to share your story and your work with a greater audience. Thank you very much.
I appreciate, and it's an honor to be here. And what you're doing is more than a mitzvah. You're empowering, you're educating, you're giving people another way of viewing and learning. And this will save their lives. Not can, it will save their life.
Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Do Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Do Want to Know.